So, Kirsten Graham, welcome to the show. I am so delighted and excited to have you here today because we're going to talk about one of the things that my clients usually avoid like the plague. Kristen is a brilliant video strategist who helps her clients get really good with podcasting, get really good and effective with YouTube videos and all kinds of video. And I think in this day and age, if you're not doing video, you are really missing the boat. You are working harder than you need to be because you're not using video. So today is going to be your wake-up call. Kristen, welcome.
Kris, thank you so much for having me. You may be in trouble because I could talk about this for hours.
I'm in. I'm ready. Me too. This is such a fun topic.
Yes. Yeah,
So,
I feel like,
tell us a little bit about you, what you do, the problems that you solve.
yeah, absolutely. So I'm a business coach, but I'm an outsourcing specialist. And my business partner owned a digital marketing agency for years. So she's a marketing coach and also an outsourcing specialist. So we're really focused on helping clients who need to get out in front of their audience. They don't necessarily want to be influencers, but they want to showcase their authority and expertise and let people really see who they are and connect with them through their marketing, ideally through their video marketing or their podcast. And so we have a really detailed process for how we help our clients do that. And then we train virtual assistants to take care of everything on the back end for them. So they get to show up and just be involved in these great conversations and then upload the video and everything else is done for them. So that's what we do.
What a gift. What a gift. We were just talking before I hit record about the reality that, I love podcasting. I love having a podcast. I love guesting on podcasts, but none of it would happen if I didn't have a VA to manage all the details because as business owners, our plates are full, and adding a podcast to your plate is a really smart idea. Creating videos for YouTube is a really smart idea, but you really do need help. And I do highly recommend that you don't do this all by yourself. There are better areas in your business that you should be putting your attention into. And I'm very curious, Kirsten, what's your process? How do you do this?
Yeah, so we work with our clients on helping them with their strategy. We really encourage everyone to have a video podcast. Some of our clients are still creating basically talking head style videos for YouTube. So we really work with both types of clients. But we help them with their strategy. We help them understand all the technology that they need. We help them to build their confidence on camera. We talk to them about how to book great guests. So we really do everything to support the client to get up and running. And as soon as they have a couple of their episodes recorded, we actually interview, vet, and train virtual assistants who then we pair them with the client. And then they work directly with that client. I like to say we're not a marketing agency and we're not an outsourcing agency. Our model is very different because we wanted to find a way to empower the client to start to build their own team and also to make it cost effective so that they could afford to do this long term. A lot of times people will implement marketing strategies or hire an agency or run ads or whatever that looks like. But before long, it becomes too expensive. And so they let it fall by the wayside. So we wanted to make sure that our clients have the opportunity to end up creating a podcast that can have longevity, giving them the opportunity to get better as a podcast host and to really understand all the different ways that they can monetize a podcast and to be able to focus on those things rather than video editing and audio editing and uploading and graphic design and all the things that come with having a podcast.
Right. Which is what I've read anyway, is the biggest challenge is actually keeping your podcast going. So you really set your clients up to do well, both because it's affordable and because you've got help and because you can just focus on the most important things. What are the stats today around how many podcasts are coming out? And from what I've heard, now I don't have any numbers on this, but like a lot of podcasts are only around for 4 or 8 episodes. Is that right?
That's correct. The majority, you have a lot of people who drop off after 3 episodes, and then you have the people who make it to like 8 or 12. So they kind of have like one season or, done.
Yep.
But at the 24-month mark, only 7% of people are podcasting. So if you're thinking, wow, there's so many podcasts out there, there's no room for me. First of all, understand that once a podcast produced, it's always out there, but it doesn't mean it's an active or live podcast, meaning that there's not new episodes being added consistently. So when we talk with our clients about starting a podcast, part of my conversation is this isn't something you want to take on and do just to test the waters, right? You want to find out ahead of time if this is something you think you would enjoy and be able to commit to, because the longevity is important with marketing, consistency, showing up, getting better. We were talking earlier before this call that when you're a guest on a podcast or you host a podcast, every single time you have this opportunity to get better and show up in a really real way. And in the beginning, you're terrified, right? So you're not always showing up your best, but with each episode, you get a little better and a little better to the point where, you have something that's real. People, when they watch your videos, when they listen to your podcast, you're showing up authentically as yourself, and that comes through. Next to meeting someone in person, video builds know, like, and trust better than anything else. So if you can't get in the same room with someone, the second best thing is video content, creating stuff that your audience will enjoy. And again, that will let them see who you are. And I always like to say, I talk with my hands. If you run into me on the street, what you see in this podcast is what you're going to get if we start having a conversation. And, people I think are so afraid, well, what if someone doesn't like me? Or, what if I mess up or something? But the reality is that the right people are going to be attracted to you and how you deliver information and what you talk about. And those are your ideal clients.
So tell me about the strategy behind, before anything, right? You really want to be thoughtful and strategic. So if I did not have a podcast, tell me what we would work through to figure out the strategy, because the worst thing you want to do is to jump in with both feet and go down this path without a clear plan and without intention around who you want to speak to. What are the end goals of this podcast? Do you want the podcast to get you more clients? Are you just doing it for fun? I think we all know, like, our time is precious. So typically we do podcasts because we want to get in front of more people and we want to attract more clients. So curious, how you navigate the strategic, the prep work part of your work.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think you and I went down a different path. Jeannie and I started hosting a podcast first, and then I started guesting on podcast. You started guesting first, and then you started your podcast. Your way is probably the smarter way, right? So the first thing I would do with talking with someone who is really thinking about having a podcast, but they're not 100% sure, I would encourage them to get booked on a few podcasts and have the experience from that side, of the mic, so to speak. Yeah. And that would be the first step. The other thing is I would want to know what types of podcasts do they listen to? What style of podcasting do they like? And then more importantly, their ideal client. We talk about what other podcasts do you think your ideal clients are listening to? And I think that's a great way to start. Market research is something in any part of a business that most business owners do not take seriously enough. And I always like to use the example of McDonald's. We all know what they sell: 2 whole beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions, and a sesame seed bun. Like, we know.
I haven't heard that in a while. That's great.
But the reality is they spend millions of dollars before they're going to roll out something like the McRib, or before they're going to put a new location. Because spending that money in the market research, even though it sounds like a lot of money, you'd rather, in McDonald's case, spend a couple million than to lose 20 or 30 million. Okay. And so the small business owners, we often do not do enough market research. So the first thing is, what podcasts are your ideal clients listening to now? And then after that, if you're going to have a podcast with guests, what type of guests do you want to have on your podcast? What topics do you feel like would really bring a lot of value to your ideal clients? And I think those are important conversations to have in the beginning. And then also, is your goal to monetize it by getting clients? Is your goal to monetize it by getting affiliate partnerships? We end up with a lot of collaborations with the other podcast hosts that we work with and the guests that we work with. Do you plan on selling sponsorships? There's lots of different ways you can make money with a podcast, but going into it with a strategy, I think, is so important. And I think the most important part of that strategy is, who's your ideal client and what content do you feel like you would want to talk about on a consistent basis that would truly help them, and let them see that you're there to serve them.
I love it. You mentioned trying to figure out what style of podcast that you want to do. Tell me more about that. What are the styles of podcasts, and how do you figure out what that is and what's best for you?
Right. So first of all, we always recommend a video podcast. YouTube is the largest podcasting platform. A lot of people don't realize this, but Spotify and Apple both want you to upload a video podcast now. But if someone is more old school and they would rather have an audio podcast, if that's really their thing, I would say do that 100%. Video is so important. But at the same time, if someone is really, again, they really have listened to podcasts for years and they still like that traditional audio podcast, if that's how you feel about it, start there. Do that. Some people want more of a podcast where it's just them and they're talking about different topics week after week. That's fantastic. Other people want to invite guests on and have conversations, again, around topics that'll, will benefit their audience. Some people will do a mix of podcasts. It may be one week it's just them, and the following week it's a guest. So there's lots of different ways to create your podcast. And also a little bit of research. Is the ideal time for your podcast 15 to 20 minutes? Should it be 45 minutes to an hour? And I think a lot of that depends on the topic and the types of conversations you're having. We know a lot of people that have 5-minute podcasts. I did one of those the other day. It was rapid fire. It was super fun. And I could see the value in that. It wouldn't be necessarily my style because I like deeper conversations, but I totally enjoyed the experience. I watched a lot of the different episodes and they were all fantastic. So again, what does your ideal client want to listen to? Mm-hmm. And then what do you feel like you really aligns with who you are as a person?
What's trending right now? I have heard that the 20-minute mark podcast is a bit of a sweet spot for people because they can go walk their dog or run a quick errand and digest the whole podcast at one time. Is that true? Or what have you found?
Yeah, we try to keep our podcast between 20 and 25 minutes. And it is that true. It is the reason that it's walking the dog or it's the commute to work, okay, or the commute home. So I feel like that area, that timeline is ideal for both of those things. And it's not so long that people have to pause it and then come back to it later. Maybe they won't come back to it. It's not to the point where there's only 5 to 10 minutes left. I'll just, bounce off and forget about it. So I do think there's a lot of data that showcases that is a very good timeline. But it's interesting because, again, like you, I've been a guest on a lot of different podcasts. And sometimes those podcasts are an hour long, but the way the conversations go, it really warrants that time. So if you are not, I always like to say the episode or the information needs to deliver on the promise of the title. So if our title today for this podcast is, the power of video marketing and podcasting, we want to make sure that we have a conversation that leaves the person with a full understanding of that, like of what we talked about. What is the power of it? We want to give you that information. And so if that conversation is really rich and it's adding a ton of value, it can be a lot longer, but you don't want to drag something out just to have a longer podcast. I guess you want to make sure you're delivering concise, valuable information and wrapping it up at the end of that value. I guess I'm rambling here. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, it'll lengthen the podcast length. Yeah, because I'm thinking about Tim Ferriss, who's a really famous podcaster who I've listened to his podcast for years yes. and years. And he's really known for, number one, not editing his podcasts. He has great interviews and they go as long as they need to go, but they're not fluff. They're not filled with fluff. Like it is quality content. So he has longer episodes and they're very much unedited and you kind of feel like you're a fly on the wall. And that's, different than maybe that 20-minute sweet spot, but it works for him and his audience really appreciates those longer, deeper conversations. You mentioned working with clients around their confidence. And I would say I think we're both in alignment. Video is really important. You have to have video if you want to stand out, if you want to be sought after, if you want to build the trust. That is absolutely crucial to getting a client, right? A client will only work with you if they trust you, if they know, like, and trust you. But that trust can be built so efficiently with video. But the clients that I work with and the websites that I write and build, they always have a video component to them. I always say, you just got to have video. And if you're uncomfortable with that, well, so is everybody else. And that's okay. Like there are ways to allow you to get in front of the camera and not freeze or not feel uncomfortable. There's a lot of little tricks that you can do to help you kind of just gently jump over that hurdle. But the reality is and this is true for me too, I don't look forward to recording videos and talking to the camera. I wouldn't consider it fun. I've gotten better at it. It's less painful than it used to be. But what would you say to somebody who is feeling insecure or uncomfortable or dreading recording a video? How do you build confidence?
Well, we can only build confidence by taking action and doing the hard thing, right? First of all, I don't think anyone likes the way they look or sound on video. We hear ourselves and it sounds so different than when we hear ourselves talking. So I always joke that unless you're a total narcissist, you probably don't enjoy watching yourself on video or listening to yourself on video. So first of all, congratulations, you're perfectly normal and you're not a narcissist. But it's like anything else. One of the things I think that helps a lot of our clients is if you have a true desire to serve people. Like I always like to think, even with this interview, Kris, if you and I help one person, if one person listens to this and it really helps them, I feel like we win. We've done a good job. So lowering the bar to just like wanting to serve people. And we don't really have any control over who sees this or who listens to it. All we can do is put it out there and have faith that it'll get in front of the right people. So I think for us, we talk a lot about serving your clients, showing up and just delivering information, even though you're terrified to be on camera or you feel overwhelmed by being on camera. So that's the first thing I would say. I'm going to date myself because I just did some math. I realized we're in 2026 and I started my first YouTube channel in 2006, which was 20 years ago.
Wow.
And I started it in a very different industry. I owned a mortgage company at the time. It was the end of 2026, early 2027. And to be honest, my first video that I did was done out of complete frustration. It was done to solve a problem. When a person would call about a mortgage, I would give them an entire list of documents. I would go over it with them on the phone of what they needed to bring in. And then I would email them a checklist. And inevitably, we would get back, 70% of the documents we needed, which meant our processors had to chase them down. Well, Jeannie, my current business partner at that time, I was actually mentoring her with her business. And she said, have you thought about doing a video for that? And I was like, well, no. And she said, well, you should. And then instead of sending them just the checklist, email them this video. My first video was so cheesy. It was like, I need your last 2 years of W-2s. And then W-2s popped up beside my face. I need 3 months of bank statements, and that popped up. And I need all pages, because if page number 7 is completely blank, that's great. But the underwriter doesn't know page 7 is completely blank. So it was just, it was so bad. I think it was comical. I think, which is why I think it worked. It was terrible. And they're probably thinking, oh, this poor lady did this video, so we should probably pay attention to it and bring in the documents. But we saw our documents go up. What people brought in went up to almost 92%, which meant our processors weren't chasing as much. It made us way more efficient. So in that one video, we learned quickly the video, people will listen to that. And I started thinking about this, like, why did that happen? Well, if I'm talking to the wife, I'm talking to the husband, and on that call, I'm telling them what we need. Well, then later that night after dinner, they're pulling out that list and they're getting it together. And, the wife's saying, no. When I talked to her, she said she needs all pages. And the husband's like, page 7 is empty. She doesn't need that, and throws it out, right? So this put them both on the same page. It reinforced what I had the conversation about. So that was one of the things that I saw. The video is something that people will pay attention to and follow. That led us to creating more videos for our mortgage company. One of my loan officers, he did a hilarious video. It was, what is APR? And he said, APR stands for a pretty good rate. If you want that, you need to call Paul. But then of course he went on to explain, APR. So anyway, we just had a lot of fun with our videos. And this is what I think blew me away, is when someone would come into the office and I'd never met them, I had not talked to them, and they knew me. They're having conversation with me as if were best friends. And I don't know if you've ever run into anyone like at your kid's game or on the street or something, and they start talking to you and you're thinking, I don't know this person. How do I know this person? Where do I know this person from? It's very uncomfortable. That's the feeling I had. And that's when I realized, that's when I really got, the power of video is when people watch enough of your content, they feel like they know you. We always talk about know, like, and trust, but that how they know you is unbelievable. They know my dog's name because he would show up in the videos. They would know if we pulled some jokes on each other in the week or something. So we just shared a lot of things. Or, oh, I'd always love the color of your office, and now that I'm seeing it here, it blew my mind. So if you're thinking about starting videos for your business, a podcast, it may be uncomfortable. You may be terrible, but that's okay. You're going to get better. And when we circle back to Tim Ferriss and not editing his podcast, that's a choice. We edit our podcast because I feel like if someone's listening to a podcast, they may not, they're just listening. But if someone's watching on YouTube, maybe they want visuals, maybe they want B-roll imagery because it makes it more interesting. But some people just enjoy watching two people have a great conversation. So it really depends on your audience, and it depends on what you're comfortable with. But video editing is like having a magic wand. So I think that's also helpful when you first get started.
Yeah, it really is. It's so effective. And once you experience that, it propels you to keep going with it. It's very encouraging. And I really believe that potential client will hire you after they've spent time with you. So how can we use video to allow people to spend time with us when we're not even technically there, right?
Yeah, and circling back to my mortgage company, that's exactly what our videos did. They were all educational. They were all value-based. We tried to have fun in them. And so people, because they watched those videos, they got to know us. They got to know who the processors were. They knew kind of what the office looked like because we shot videos in different places. So the question of how do you get people to watch your video content is, first of all, you have to record videos. So that's step one. But then step two is you don't realize when you record a video, that video is working for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's going onto YouTube. You're uploading it to Spotify, to Apple. It's being pulled from there to dozens of other podcasting platforms. Most of us don't even know what they know all of them or what they are, what they're called. But there are tons and tons of podcasting platforms. You can get your podcast put on iHeartRadio. There's all kinds of things you can do. But now you have this awesome asset that you can use for your marketing. So you can pull reels and stories, and you can use those on Instagram or LinkedIn or TikTok, wherever you want to use them. And it's really funny because with marketing, I just know we always ask people, do you have an email list? And they'll say, yes. Well, how big's your email list? I've got 1,000 people. How often do you email them? I don't, or I haven't in 6 months. And I find that the video content is a fantastic thing. Instead of an old school newsletter, each week you're just sending out a video to say, hey, I had a fantastic conversation with this person about this topic, and it will probably help you with your business. Check it out. So now you're sending out something to your email list where they get to know you. And it's interesting because when you're the host, I mean, right now your audience is getting to know more about me than you because you're the host, but they still get to know you. And they get to see that you're bringing on great conversations. You're bringing people onto your podcast that can truly help them with their business. So now they know that you're a giving person. You can create your own commercials inside of your videos. So you can have commercial breaks where you talk about what you do. But I just think there's so many ways to get your videos in front of the right audience. The other thing is when you have a guest, it's now a collaboration. So when this podcast goes live, Kris, you're going to let us know. And then we're going to start marketing this podcast to our audience. So now all of a sudden people are now introduced to your podcast who maybe wouldn't have found it for a while, right? Because we're talking about it and we're sharing it. And that's the other thing I think I love so much about podcasting is it really is a collaboration.
It really is. It really is. I have met several dear friends via podcasting who I'm in touch with on a daily basis. And it's just, I never expected that to happen through this platform. And I couldn't agree more about the power of repurposing. So you and I are on a 1 hour call ish, and then we can take this content and share it with our newsletter. For every podcast that I record, it becomes a blog post, it becomes a newsletter, it becomes YouTube shorts, it becomes YouTube full length video. Have I named all the ways you can repurpose a podcast, or are there more that I don't know about?
I think you've listed them. But the other thing is, and I think you do this as well, because I have a YouTube channel. I'm going to share this interview on my YouTube channel. So this episode will go onto your YouTube channel. Obviously, you're the host, but then I can share it to a playlist on my YouTube channel. So there's just so much leverage you can get from that repurposing of that one video. But again, it's so crazy to me because sometimes I'll have someone reach out and book a sales call. They found us on YouTube or they found our podcast, but sometimes they're quoting things to me from a video that was done 6 years ago. In this video, you said this, and I go back and I look it up. I'm looking for that video. And it's like, oh my gosh, that video is 6 years old. But after they watched some of our newer things, they went back and kind of started going through our videos and picked out some other ones they wanted to listen to, and they did. So that really is powerful to me, is that you're creating something, again, it's evergreen, 24/7, and it can be repurposed across multiple platforms. And again, I feel like hopefully everybody feels like in this conversation, other than trying to sell them on the power of video, we're not coming on here just to sell people, right? It's not like this is not an infomercial. Hey, buy from me. This is, if you own a business, both of us, you and I, Kris, both believe that video could truly help business owners to grow their businesses, to be seen as the experts, to be seen as the authority. It can make your marketing a lot easier because you have things to repurpose, and that can help you become consistent, which is so important with marketing.
Mm. Yeah, I mean that's the beautiful thing about YouTube. It really is its own search engine, and unlike Instagram and Facebook where you're in the feed that day and then you kind of basically disappears over time, YouTube, people, if they search for what you're talking about, you will come up, and it doesn't matter if it was 5 or 6 years ago. You're there and you're teaching and helping and showing up with a helpful heart, solving a micro problem, proving to the listener that you can solve much bigger problems if you can solve small problems. It's such a wonderful way to begin a relationship with just generosity and like I said, a really truly helpful heart. I think YouTube is a really great place to invest your time and energy because it really does. It is timeless. And the same thing for podcasts too. Like how many
Absolutely.
times have you listened to a great podcast and then all of a sudden you binge all the other podcasts that they have? Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because I just binge watched a series with a girlfriend, and I love the joke. Before, we had the possibility to watch TV shows back to back before the whole Netflix concept. If I had said to you, "Hey, Kris, there's a 7.5 hour movie. Would you like to go watch it on Saturday?" You would have been like, "No." But we
Yeah.
could sit down and binge watch 7.5 hours of a TV show and not think twice about it. It really is the same thing with YouTube. If people get onto your content, especially, you have to remember, you're creating content for people who may have that problem that you solve, but you don't know when they're going to have that problem. So if they all of a sudden they're looking, they're searching, and they find your content, that's when they are going to binge watch it because that's the challenge they have. We work with a lot of real estate agents, and I was at a networking thing the other night, and one of the ladies walked up and she says, "I'm working with a guy who just came in. I want to say like he came in from Thailand. Don't quote me on the location, but he came in," and she said, "He's our client because he found our videos. He's buying a house here, but he is our client simply because he found our videos. He watched a ton of them." And she said, "We have so many clients. They may not tell us when they first reach out and connect with us that they found us through video. We try to ask, but inevitably, every time we meet with someone to show them a property or to go in to talk about listing their property, they start talking about the videos that they liked."
Mm.
And so that is so powerful. If you're a real estate agent and you have videos and the other agents in your area don't, that is definitely putting you, ahead of the pack, so to speak. And especially with people being so transient, people are looking to move to different places. And so that's another powerful tool. Like we don't think about all the different industries and all the different businesses where video marketing and podcasting can have such a huge impact.
I think one thing that I tell my clients, and I'm curious what your thoughts are with this, people don't expect a really high production quality. You don't have to go out and hire a videographer. You don't have to hire a professional editor if you don't want to. Like the beautiful thing about this is it's so effective, it's so powerful, and you can really do it for pretty much free. You you can just open up Zoom and hit record. You can speak into the camera, record it to your desktop, drag and drop that over to Descript, which is my favorite editing tool. And in 5 minutes, Descript has a bunch of AI tools inside of it. Within about 5 or 10 minutes, you can be done with the whole thing. It's pretty low barrier to entry.
You could even go faster than that. You could go to YouTube and hit live and just go
There you
live
go.
on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is cost effective, and it really can be quick and easy. It just, it's all up to you how much you want to put into it. But as far as professional grade, I think there's a lot of data and research that does show that, again, the know, like, and trust is not built through perfection. They're not expecting us to be movie stars. They're not expecting us, to be perfect speakers. They want to connect with us and see that we're a real person, because, if they're going to hire you or they're going to hire us, it really is because they connect with us as people. We really buy from people, not just the product or service. And I think that's
Yes.
why it's so easy.
Yeah, and still photography is, of course, really important to have on your website and in your marketing. But what still photography doesn't communicate is your tone of voice,
Mhm.
your warmth, your confidence, your feeling of really just caring. There's so much that comes through in a simple video that you record on your computer or on your phone or on YouTube live that just comes through and like within 15 seconds, right? It's just like that first impression. You know immediately if you click with someone or resonate with them, and it happens so quickly. So you don't have to have these long videos. I think a 1 minute video on your website or on your social media, even in your email signature, is going to carry you a long way. Do you agree?
I totally agree. And you think about it, you spend so much time trying to drive traffic to your website by simply having a tab that says, podcast, and it's a drop down box and they can go and check out your podcast. That's a great way to have tons of video content on your website. So yes, along with the videos maybe you want on your homepage or the shorter videos, now once they're there, they have an opportunity to see that right there in your website, you have a full video library of all these amazing conversations
Mm.
that you've had on your podcast or on your YouTube channel.
Let's talk about podcasts, video podcast. What are three things that you would recommend, bits of wisdom, or really three things that you must have on a podcast if you want it to get you clients?
Three things. So first of all, I think I'm always a big believer in progress, not perfection. So you and I are recording this on Zoom. We also record our interviews on Zoom. Are there other things out there that will produce better quality? Yes. Riverside, there are other things, Squadcast. The problem is sometimes that technology glitches, which can stress out, a guest. So think about the things that you can do is think about, it doesn't have to be perfect. And what's the path of least resistance? What can I do to make this so easy that I'll do it? I'm not a tech person. If I had to set up a big fancy camera that had a lot of adjustments, I'm just not going to, I want to avoid it, right? So path of least resistance, what can you and what will you do? And know that you can grow and you can change and you can evolve over time. So I would say that's the first thing. You've got to show up and do it to attract clients. Mm-hmm. The second thing is make sure that the content that you're bringing onto your podcast is actually speaking to your ideal client. Most of our clients are coaches, consultants, authors, but we do work with real estate agents because, video is so important for them. So understanding, and real estate agents are business owners. So we're always thinking about the conversations that we're going to have, whether it's just Jeannie and I, or whether we're bringing on a guest. How is that conversation going to impact and help our audience? So always having a heart to serve, like you said, and thinking about, am I really delivering value to the people who are spending their very valuable time with me watching my video or listening to my podcast? The third thing was always, with anything in marketing, you have to think about conversion, call to actions. So whether the call to action is to book a call, whether it's to sign up for a free gift or something that will help you build your email list, you want to make sure you always have very clear call to actions. In this case, for your guests and for the host should have call to actions as well. The other thing is making sure that those call to actions are on the description on YouTube or in the show notes on Spotify and Apple. You want to make sure you're very clear about how and when people can connect with you. Because again, they may not reach out to you and connect with you on your first or second episode, but they may watch 10, 12 episodes and then they're ready. And that call to action may be something easy, like a lead magnet, or it may be something that takes them a little step further, like booking a call with you. And I think it's important to test those and rotate those so that, if someone's listening to you brand new, a free lead magnet, a free guide is something that they would raise their hand for. But someone who's been listening to you for a long time, they may click that button and say, yeah, I definitely want to book a call and talk to her. So just understanding that your listeners are in different places on their journey with you.
I love that. I've really gotten in the habit of focusing my call to action on, you can either do a freebie or you can go to my website and book a call. Those are my two things that I guide people to do. If I also said, hey, go follow me on Instagram and go check out my LinkedIn, and that, like, no one's going to do anything because I've just overwhelmed them. They're trying to hold multiple bowling balls. And we all know after 2 bowling balls, they all fall down. Nothing happens. So I love that you honed in on that, like a clear call to action that will meet them where they are.
Yes. Yeah. We always have to think about who's listening to our podcast. And, again, someone could think that the problem that you solve may be so urgent for them. They've listened to one episode, they're going to call you because they've got this burning need to fix a problem and they feel like you can do that. But again, sometimes it's that nurturing, offering free gifts or guides or free video trainings or whatever that looks like, just to start to bring them closer into your ecosystem. And then once they've given you their email address and they are in your ecosystem, don't abuse it. And abuse it could be two things. It could be sending them absolutely ridiculous stuff all the time that doesn't make sense. But abusing them could also be loving them and leaving them. Like, send them 1 or 2 things and then never show up again. So making sure that you appreciate that they took the time to give you their information and have a nice nurturing sequence to go along with your lead magnet. And then, have a way to continue to build that relationship with them.
I love that. All right. So what are the 3 biggest mistakes that entrepreneurs make when it comes to video?
Most people, first I was so embarrassed to say this, but I realized that most people, if they've done enough episodes, it happens. Deanie and I finished this awesome podcast interview with a guest and we realized we didn't hit record. Are you laughing because you've done it?
Been there. Yeah. And it was like, of course, pure gold.
Yes.
Gold. Yeah. I almost cried.
Best episode ever. And you realize, and you usually don't realize it right away. So then you get off that interview and then you realize you didn't record. So now you've got to reach back out to the guest and go, oh, I'm a total idiot. I didn't hit record. So, just understand, if you're going to start a podcast, it's like anything else in life, you are going to make mistakes. And I think that's what most people have made. I think the other thing that I hear a lot, especially from women, because we do train virtual assistants who take care of all the podcast production and marketing of the podcast and everything for our clients. We also train virtual assistants for people who want to get booked on podcasts. We have structures. Here's a big mistake I think a lot of people make. They think they need to know how to do everything themselves before they delegate it. And that argument is insane to me because, Kris, last time your car had a problem, did you figure out how to become the maintenance person before you took it to the mechanic?
Hell no.
You probably didn't even Google how to fix it, did you? No. Right? So, but in our businesses, for some reason, someone sold us on this whole concept. Either our self-worth is tied up in us being able to do everything, or that, before you delegate something, you have to know how to do it yourself. I will tell you right now, that is not true. I've never even logged into our Canva account. I'm not exaggerating. If you can hire the right people and have systems and processes in place, and you're hiring people who love what they do, right? I don't want to edit a video. I don't want to upload it. I don't want to create social media posts, but there are people out there who love doing that. Like, that's their superpower, and they're thrilled that that's their job. And so if you want to do this, don't feel like you have to go it alone. You don't have to figure it all out on your own. You can hire someone who can do everything. So you can just show up and have that great conversation. The part two of that is people will say, well, I don't want to relinquish control. I'm a control freak. There's no way I'm relinquishing control. Just because someone is working for you and taking care of tasks for you doesn't mean that they're the boss of that, right? You're still the one who's saying, I love that editing. I don't particularly care for that editing. That B-roll has images of men walking down Wall Street, like in suits. That's not our ideal client. So that B-roll, that imagery doesn't match, who my ideal client is. So change it. We don't mind having men in our content, but they're usually going to be, in more casual clothes, that kind of thing. So if you can coach someone on what you like and what you dislike, then they can do a magical job for you. And you don't ever have to learn how to edit a video if you don't want to.
What a gift. And so you find the VA, you train the VA, and you match the VA with the entrepreneur, knowing that it will likely be a good fit. Yeah.
Yes. And then we also now have a transition process, because over the years, the biggest reason people fail when it comes to outsourcing is they don't have a process. They don't have systems and processes in place. They don't have workflows in place. So we have very documented workflows. So the virtual assistants that we hire, they also go through a paid internship with us. So we actually train them on our content, which is how they learn all of our workflows. When it's time for them to get paired with a client, we pair them with the client, but one of our hiring and training managers actually spends the first 2 weeks with them, bridging the gap, because we found it's not just that the virtual assistant needs to know what to do and how to do it. Our client also has to learn how to manage the workflows. Right. You lead people, you manage tasks, and you manage tasks through standard operating procedures and workflows. So we have this 2-week period where the training manager actually facilitates that VA getting up and running for that client. And then we have clients that are going on 6 years with their virtual assistants, and we will replace that virtual assistant if it doesn't work out. And usually if it doesn't work out, it's within the first 2 to 3 weeks. And it's generally not a skill problem. It's a personality problem. Like, for whatever reason, that VA doesn't click. And we always want our client to feel like that VA, they click with them and they're excited to have them on their team. So we'll bring that VA back into the paid internship, and we'll rotate someone else into that position for them. Because our goal is we want you to have that VA for years. We want them to be a value part of your team. We want them to do such a great job that very seldom do you have edits or need them to make changes, because they know you, they know what you like. And that's the real goal.
So for the listeners who that are solopreneurs or are afraid to grow their team, I think a lot of them, I'm glad you touched on that control piece, because it can be really hard to relinquish control. But you also kind of reach this point of like, okay, in order to get where I want to go, I have to have help in place. And I think one of the questions that I bet people are asking right now is, can I afford this? Is this very expensive? Like, so talk us through that. Like, what is the investment range?
Right. So if you had someone to produce your podcast, most likely the best rate that you'll find is I would say a bargain rate might be $150 an episode. That would be a really good rate. The way our virtual assistants work is it's $250 a month, and they can produce a video for you every single week. And when I say produce it, I mean upload it, do all the social media marketing, set it up to go out to your email list, convert it to the blog post, put it on your website. I feel like that's the full production of that episode. So for $250 a month, you can have that first person on your team. You're looking at like $70 a week, right? So $80 a week. So very, very affordable. And the reason why it is so cost effective is we're trying to pair virtual assistants who want long-term employment with clients who want long-term virtual assistants. So it's more cost effective because they're a salaried employee, In our programs, we also teach cultural differences because that's very important to learn in order to have a great relationship. For example, in the Philippines, there's something called the 13th month. So in December, you would normally pay them another month of salary. It's just how their things work there. Right. So we really encourage our clients to do that, pay that 13th month. So instead of $1,250 times 12 months, it's $1,250 times 13 months, 13 months. We talk about, instead of increasing salary, especially if your business is, still growing, so maybe you have that roller coaster, good months, bad months, instead of increasing salary, give bonuses when you have great months. That way you're keeping your overhead consistently low, but you are being generous and sharing the wealth with your team when things go well. So we do a lot of coaching around what it looks like to build a team. And most of our clients go on to hire multiple team members.
Amazing. Wow. I'm inspired. I'm very inspired. Kirsten, it's been really wonderful having you here today. I think we've all learned a lot. Where can everybody find you?
Absolutely. They can find me at sixfigurebusinesscoaching.com. That's sixfigurebusinesscoaching.com. If you're thinking that you'd like to have a podcast or a YouTube channel, we have a program that's listed. It's called the Marketing BA Advantage. And you can check out the information there. And then if you'd like, you can book a call with me. Happy to talk with you about it and figure out if it's right for you.
And we will put all of this in the show notes. So thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me, Kris. I had so much fun.
Me too.